put in also all the other things that I've mentioned, I think it's a good chance, especially with the James ossuary, that the Talpiot tomb is in fact where Jesus was permanently moved. So the final question is, well, then why would people believe in resurrection? If he's in a tomb somewhere, did they not know it? I think they knew it. I think they're not thinking of resurrection as the resuscitation of a corpse. I know later that's the idea, because the Gospels are written in an apologetic or defensive way to say, no, no, it wasn't a ghost, it was a real body. But when Paul talks about resurrection, and Paul's the earliest witness, he's from the 50s, he says he's seen the Lord right here. I've seen the Lord. He appeared to me in 1 Corinthians 9. He says, I've seen Jesus. But when you ask him what he saw a glorified spiritual body of Jesus. And he tells the believers in Jesus, you're going to be raised up from your tombs and transformed into a glorious spirit being like Jesus was. So what's left behind? The remains of the body. But it's like old clothing, taking off old clothing, being reclothed. Your soul is reclothed with a new body. The body's like clothing. And visiting the tomb is not the point, because the bones and the decaying flesh is not the person. That's what's left behind. Resurrection is transformation. Paul calls it metamorphosis, to be transformed. And he talks about leaving the old clothes behind and receiving new clothes as a naked soul. So it's interesting when you talk about the sightings of Jesus, the appearances as they're sometimes called. First of all, Mark doesn't have any, but he says you're going to see him in Galilee, but we don't have an account of it. But Matthew has Mary Magdalene at the tomb, and she sees Jesus, and then Galilee on a mountain, but it says some doubted. Luke has only Jerusalem appearances, and John has Jerusalem and the Galilee. I think these are all secondary. These are developed later, after 70 AD. The earliest source of resurrection is 1 Corinthians 15. And what Paul says he got from the Jerusalem church is that Jesus first appeared to Peter, or he was sighted by Peter, and the 12, and a group of 500. So these are what we call apparitions. Doesn't mean they're untrue. It just means it's not a corpse walking around resuscitated. That's not the idea of resurrection to these people. And then he appeared to James, his brother, and then all the rest of the apostles. And then he says, last of all to me. And when you ask him, well, what did you see? He says, well, I can't describe the body. It's glorious. It's immortal. It's powerful. It's not flesh and blood. He says it's not flesh and blood. And so far from a ghost, it's a spirit being. Paul calls the resurrected Jesus a life-giving spirit, but he has a body, and he says it's a spiritual body, a wind body, but not a body of flesh.